Good evening, and welcome to Panorama, App State's annual TED Talk style event featuring student speakers. My name is Willem Talbot. I'm a sophomore electronic media and broadcasting major, and I'm thrilled to be hosting Panorama this year. Tonight, we have 7 excellent speakers who have prepared a variety of speeches on topics that they are all incredibly passionate about. We would like to say a quick thank you to the Department of Communications, the Schaefer Center, and App TV for making all of this possible. There will be a quick 15-minute intermission about halfway through the show. And out of respect for the hard work and the time that these students have put into their speeches, we ask that you please silence your cell phones. And if you need to leave at any point, we ask that you do not do so until the speakers have finished. And without further ado, please welcome Anna Harrison with her speech, Rooted in Resilience, to the stage.
Hi, everyone. If you've been anywhere in North Carolina, especially in the western part of our state, this should look very familiar to you. Kudzu. When I was growing up, I would see these rolling waves of green, and I would think, wow, how beautiful. I love seeing all of this greenery in our everly growing, developed world, full of asphalt and concrete. But I would point this out to the adults around me, and they would say, that's not beautiful. That's invasive. That's harming our native species, and we need to eradicate it. And that didn't really make sense to me. Why did something that grew so widely in North Carolina be such a bad thing? So I kept that in the back of my mind, and I decided to look further into it. And it turns out kudzus traveled a lot, and the perspective around the plant has changed a lot over time as well. So, kudzu is originally from Southeast Asia, specifically Southeast China and Japan. It originally came over to the U.S. in the late 1800s and heavily subsidized by the government, up to $8 an acre. That's $150 an acre in today's money. That's a lot of money. And by the 1950s, it was deemed invasive, and you were no longer allowed to plant it. It was called the vine that ate the South. Now, this frames the South as already being devoured, as if this is an issue that's already occurred, and we're just here to pick up the aftermath. And I find this to be a very negative perspective, and one that we can definitely change to a more positive one. But first, I'd like to look at some of the ways people fight against the plant. One of the main ways people like to fight against kudzu is through herbicides. Herbicides like triclopyr-4 are recommended by our EPA to get rid of woody, viney species of plants, which kudzu is. But that also includes a lot of our native species as well. And kudzu is an extremely hardy plant. It takes multiple consistent applications of these chemicals to even begin to get rid of it. While our native species, which are oftentimes more fragile, are completely eradicated before kudzu is even touched. This also includes small animals and birds, leaving the habitat completely decimated. Now, mowing and trimming are also ways one can get rid of kudzu, but I would argue that those ways are the least efficient. I would also say that they're the most time-consuming. Kudzu has an extremely deep, extensive root system, and it can grow quickly, up to 1 foot a day. So that's a lot of mowing and trimming to try and keep up with. I just don't see it being worth it. Now, to truly protect our native species, I find that we need to work with the plant, learning the intricacies of kudzu. And to do so, I think we should look at what the plant's presence is like where it's originally from. And one might think that's incredibly different from it is here. But that's not the case. We have a very similar environment to Southeast Asia. And the kudzu will grow rampant if it is not stewarded there, just as it does here. But there's one big difference. People have built a reciprocal relationship with plant, one where they find benefits from it. And I would like to go through those benefits because I think those are ones we can reap here as well. So people like to make textiles with kudzu, with baskets being one of the main ways people like to utilize it. These long, thin runner mines make great baskets, and people also enjoy eating it. The leaves and the roots make great food for people, and they taste like snow pea. The flower, they taste like artificial grape. People mainly eat the root, with it making a great tea, having amazing cardiovascular health benefits, and other nutrition that you would find in vegetables at the grocery store. But these here can be found in your backyard. A root like this is over 100 pounds, and it's just one in a field of many. Livestock can also enjoy the benefits of kudzu, with cows and goats enjoying the fodder from the leaves and the vines. It creates an amazing fodder that's similar to alfalfa, as it has high protein values. And pigs enjoy rooting around for the roots. The soil also can get the nutritional value of kudzu. As I mentioned before, kudzu has a deep, extensive root system, lending it to being a legume. And legumes add nitrogen back into our soil, a vital nutrient that our crops need to grow, which is one of the main reasons why kudzu was brought over to the US in the first place and subsidized so heavily. Another reason why kudzu was originally brought to the US was for erosion control, something we can especially see the importance of with the mudslides we experienced during Hurricane Helene. Kudzu is an extremely climate-resilient plant. As I mentioned earlier, it's extremely hardy, even more so than a lot of our native species. Communities that work with kudzu encourage you to steward it rather than completely eradicate it. And while they do encourage you to plant native species that are hardy and remove kudzu from native species, at the end of the day, kudzu is just more climate resilient. And in a world where our practices are not changing and our climate quickly is, I would much rather see greenery like kudzu in our world than none at all. These practices are growing increasingly popular in Western North Carolina, with nonprofits like Kudzu Culture encouraging people to harvest off of their land. It helps people to grow closer as communities and helps people to learn new things. People have begun to restructure their perspective around the plant. I know I certainly have. I've gone from seeing kudzu as a colonizer of my landscape to one that's a part of my community, helping people to grow closer to the natural world, helping communities to grow closer together through teaching, eating, and a love of our native species. The way I see it, stewarding is the answer. Kudzu is not only a part of our community, it's a community builder, having a positive impact on both people and the non-humans in our world. And this is a perspective that I invite you to explore as well. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Jackson Magdance. With their speech, your favorite artist is probably queer, and that's pretty important.
In case it wasn't already apparent, I love Daft Punk. They are absolutely my favorite band. And like every normal fan of Daft Punk, at some point in my life, I've asked the question, are the robots in Daft Punk queer? The answer, after a completely normal Google search, is a shocking no. They're robots. But I found something really inspiring when I did this Google search. You see, the robots in Daft Punk are incredibly supportive of the queer community. In 2014, when accepting their Grammy, they said they were enthused by all the gay marriages that were happening around the time. And in an interview with French magazine Tatu, they said, of course the robots are for marriage for all. It is very heartwarming, but it makes a lot of sense. Without the queer community, my favorite band would not exist. Now, before I go on, I have to just say this. When I'm saying queer, I promise I'm not using a slur. Over time, it has been reclaimed to mean something along the lines of any sexual or gender orientation that does not fit within cishet normativity. It is kind of replacing LGBTQIA+, and it's also a lot less of a mouthful for me. Anyways, my favorite band was created by the queer community. Let's take it back to the 1970s. This is Disco Demolition Night. It's often seen as the symbolic and literal death of disco. Thousands of people packed a baseball stadium in Chicago and smashed a ton of records, and a riot ensued. It's an insane story. I recommend looking it up. But what happened from this was a lot of radio stations had a bunch of disco CDs, and not CDs, sorry, vinyls left over, and a bunch of innovative DJs took these records and started remixing them, putting synthesized drums and instruments over top. What we get is house music. House music was pioneered by queer DJs. These two up here, Frankie Knuckles and Ron Hardy, are considered to be the godfathers of the genre. Both of them were gay men. The first clubs to play house music were gay clubs. The warehouse where house music gets its name was a famous gay club in Chicago. As the music made its way over to Europe, it took the same trend. Gay clubs were the ones that were playing house music. LeBain's is a famous one that Daft Punk cites quite often. So I don't think it's a shocking revelation that queer people have invented monumental pieces of media. I don't think I need to be telling you this. So why am I up here talking about it? Because of Kansas Senate Bill 63, the Help Not Harm Act, which restricts the use of state funds for gender transitioning. Wyoming Senate File 0077, Compelled Speech is Not Free Speech, which restricts the use of preferred pronouns in government settings. Alabama House Bill 130, the Don't Say Gay Act, no discussion of sexual or gender orientation in the classroom. I don't think I need to tell you there is a consolidated and targeted attack on the queer community in the United States, all the way up to the highest powers that control us. Donald Trump's Agenda 47 boasts of cutting federal funding to any public school that discusses sexual or gender orientation within the classroom. Close to home, App State shamefully removed many resources for LGBT youth from their website. In 2023, because of things such as all these acts being introduced in different states and a rise in hate crimes against queer community, a state of emergency was declared for the queer community. All this rhetoric has a death toll. Queer youth are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their cishet peers. One queer youth attempts suicide every 45 seconds. That's been around 6 since I have started speaking. The FBI estimates that 1 in 5 hate crimes are against the queer community. Queer youth are 4 times more likely to experience gun violence against them. If more bills like these ones up here are passed, this will surely increase. They want to get rid of queerness. They want to make it disappear. But they can't. I started this with the story of house music and how the queer community formed my favorite band because I wanted to show that queerness exists in so many facets of our lives. It is ingrained in our lives. Queerness is everywhere. Vancouver Island University has an excellent page on this called How to Combat Homophobia and Heterosexism. The only way that we can stop and make the world better for the queer community is by following things such as this. One of the lines is learn about queer people who made a significant contribution to history. That's why I'm on stage today. That's why I'm talking about the queer pioneers who made my favorite band. You can draw a direct line from any band influenced by Daft Punk, LCD Sound System, Justice, Skrillex, and any band that's influenced by them. If someone in your life is homophobic, A, I am so sorry, and B, they probably consume something influenced by queer media without even realizing it. And it's very important that you have a conversation with them. If they like any of the following artists, Queen, David Bowie, Barry Manilow, Janis Joplin, Frank Ocean, Prince, Ricky Martin, Little Richard, Tyler the Creator, Lady Gaga, Elton John, George Michaels, and Lou Reed, allegedly, or any artist directly or indirectly influenced by them, you should tell them that. You should show them that queerness exists everywhere. Queerness is unavoidable. I chose music for my example because I'm very passionate about it. I listen to a lot of music, but you can apply this to so many other things. So many influential, great people were queer. For a few examples, Alan Turing, the Wachowski sisters who created The Matrix, possibly even Isaac Newton. So if you have someone in your life who thinks that they have completely removed themselves from queerness, I want you to have a conversation with them. I want you to make them realize that queerness is natural, queerness is inevitable, and you can never get rid of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson. And next, please welcome Dylan Jackson with their speech on healthcare in rural America.
PCPs, general practitioners, whatever you call them, are few and far between in the rural United States. The general practice of primary care is dying in rural areas, with higher rates of physicians and providers flocking to more populated areas and studying under more specialized practices. Not to mention that medical school costs are at an all-time high, and in 2024, we saw the lowest enrollment rates ever. So what's going wrong? Some say it's compensation, some say it's the cost of education. Both very valid arguments and very true. But today I'm here to argue against the business model. Across the United States, we see one major business model: fee-for-service. In a nutshell, when you seek care at a fee-for-service institution or clinic, you're expected to pay your copay, a predisposed and agreed on amount through the contract you signed with your insurance for care. But then the provider you saw bills your insurance to get the most bang for their buck. Your insurance responds with how much they're willing to cover, and you're left with the rest, your deductible. Now, don't worry, I'm not here to go on and on and on about insurance jargon and bore you to death, but I could talk about your out-of-pocket max and your monthly and premium rate, but I'm here to tell you that fee-for-service healthcare is a scam. Fee-for-service healthcare is a scam built to work for big business and against you, the patient. It's built to work for pharmaceutical companies, large hospital system conglomerates, and you guessed it, insurance companies. Fee-for-service institutions often target underserved communities because they know they can, like those in the rural United States. Across the United States, 24.4% of all healthcare providers are primary care providers, while 50% would be ideal. Now consider that 11% of primary care of providers in rural areas are primary care physicians. That's over 13% less than the national average and way less than what it should be. Now, those 11% of providers are servicing 20% of the United States population that lives in rural areas. And that 20% of the United States population lives in this orange space, which is considered rural to the country standards. Populations in the rural United States are often undereducated, and especially in terms of health and health outcomes, health solutions like diet and exercise, and really what a healthy lifestyle looks like. Not to mention, like a lot of you in this room, they're undereducated as to how the business model of healthcare even works. That brings me to the topic of my speech: how fee-for-service healthcare doesn't work. A provider's compensation is typically based on how many patients they see, and how many minutes of care that they bill for. So if you're a patient at a fee-for-service clinic, you're often rushed in and out. You're left with more questions than you really had answered. You feel brushed off. You feel like a number. It kind of feels like a one-size-fits-all approach. I don't know about you, but I think most of us in this room wear different size shoes. So when it comes to our health, our well-being, our livelihood, why should we conform to a similar mold? The real answer is that you don't have to, that there are other care models out there, and like the one I'm going to be talking about today, they serve the patient. Health equity and continuity of care are core values. Patient education, satisfaction, and advocacy are at the root of how they operate. Today I'm going to be talking to you about value-based care. Value-based care institutions and clinics operate differently than fee-for-service clinics. They contract with your insurance rather than billing them. So you'll find that there's less stress on rushed and impersonal visits. It's not like the more you talk, the more you pay. It's like we're here to get to the root of the problem and solve why you're feeling ill. You feel valued. You're probably wondering how I know anything about this. Well, as someone who works in the public health field, who used to work at a fee-for-service clinic, and who currently works at a value-based care clinic, both in rural areas, I can speak on how positive and accepted the value-based care model is. At my clinic, we offer a larger, more specialized care team. We have people like nurses and community health workers. We offer a strong social support system and help patients with their needs, regardless if they're health, social, resource, or income related. A lot of you are probably now wondering why that's not the reality of the United States healthcare system. Well, there's a few reasons why. Politics and economics rule the root of healthcare and how it progresses into the future. Your representatives, local, state, and federal, are all responsible for shaping that future. Are you someone who needs a more hands-on approach? Do you want to feel valued as a person and a patient rather than just a number or a barcode? Are you someone who needs a more in-depth workup? Someone who wants to feel valued and appreciated as a human rather than just a little guinea pig or a rabbit? I question you because if this is you, you're probably a patient who can pursue value-based healthcare for yourself. The biggest hurdle and obstacle to becoming one, like I said, was politics and economics and how we need to change that. I ask you to push for healthcare reform in this country because it's needed. Healthcare reform in this country where health equity and continuity of care are core values. Healthcare in this country where equity is at the root of how you're treated. I ask you to bring value-based care into the conversation and kind of forget about fee-for-service care because at the end of the day, who's it serving? You or the insurance company? Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. And now, time for a little music. Please welcome Ryan Stukes with their speech, Finding My Voice, a journey through music and self-expression.
I was depressed. This deep unhappiness and emptiness I felt consumed me my freshman and sophomore year. Why? Within 2 weeks arriving on campus, I had lost a loved one from COVID. My grandma. She has spent her last 6 months seeing me graduate from high school and filled with pride when I received the Chancellor Scholarship, App State's oldest prestigious full tuition merit-based opportunity. Her passing hit at a time that I wasn't prepared for. Grief made me feel lost, afraid that I would lose other family members, including my mom. Not only that, fearing my own mortality. That feeling just couldn't leave me. I questioned who I was. Not only that, my grades were slipping and my sense of belonging was fading. I was surrounded by talented peers, but I was experiencing imposter syndrome. I questioned, do I truly belong? Am I worthy of the opportunities I had earned? So I would look at myself in the mirror with self-doubt, asking, who am I? To Ryan Stutes. Death can be instant or it can be slow and agonizing. And for me, losing my grandmother happened in a second. The memories, the moments I had with her turned into distant memories. And I carried this weight, this burden as I came to a university. I was in a new environment and I still had that burden. Yes, there was great times my freshman year and sophomore years, especially meeting friends, having my longtime friends. But that feeling of emptiness and unhappiness was like lingering behind me as I was going through college. How did I cope? Music. My musical journey started when I was in 6th grade, and I started learning the violin. Later on, I got accepted into a performing arts school in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I continued my passion with violin through orchestra clinics and youth orchestras, and then I eventually transitioned to the viola. On a side note, viola is similar to a violin, but it's a little bit bigger. It has a different strings, a low string, a C string, that makes it a deep, vibrant, passionate instrument. And then I came to App State pursuing a minor in music because I knew this passion, something I wanted to stay on the side, something I wanted to maintain and not be forced out of. And I played in the Appalachian Symphony Orchestra, having so much time, but I also knew that I did not want to pursue applying or auditioning for top symphony, as I felt that was too rigorous, too rigid for me. I also love the jazz. It's my favorite genre of music. I love listening to it because it's just letting go. And one thing I learned when growing up and listening to jazz was that there would be a musical break where musicians, one at a time, would stand up and start playing spontaneous melodies. No, I didn't know what it was at the time. I was like, this is incredible. It was memorable, but energetic, but made the performance lively. And so I went up to a jazz musician and asked them, what is that melody? What are you doing? And they had one word to tell me: improvisation. Musical improvisation is music that isn't planned. Botanica describes it as a free performance of a musical passage. I see it as a creative process, an instinctual form of communication. Listening to jazz was like having an unfiltered conversation, and an improvising was what really allowed me to explore who I was and who I am. So I continued to improv, doing this type of doodling, I called it, in the practice room in Haines School of Music. And I'll just take 5-10 minutes of just doodling on my instrument with any melodies that would come to mind. And then I continued it so much, it became a ritual. And then when I had my private lessons, I would tune my instrument and then I would just start playing. And my viola professor asked me, like, what is this? What are you doing? That sounds so beautiful. And I would say, I'm just doodling. And he was like, oh, you're improvising. I was then encouraged to continue improving. And not only that, adding the material I was learning in the assigned pieces to my improvisation. So structural pieces like Johann Sebastian Bach became more expressive, more energetic, more personal. But my first official, I consider official, public improvisation was on February 23rd, 2023, during the Viola Studio recital, where I performed for 7 minutes on stage an improvisation that I came up with as I was playing in the moment. This improvisation was named The Endless Journey. Now, mind you, I named the piece, it had my composition, had my name on there and my birthday, but no one, not the professor, not my classmates, not the audience, not even me, knew exactly what I was going to play. And that's what I love about improvisation. It's unpredictable, but it allows you to just fully explore the limits. So throughout the time, I just loved it so much, and I continued it too. And if you guys don't mind, I would love to showcase a little bit of me improvising. I know this. Thank y'all. Thank you. So what's the point of this speech? For me, music, therapy, and the willingness to learn the roots of my struggles has helped me to grow, has helped me see the light at the end of the tunnel. It has allowed me to live the authentic version of Ryan Stukes. Now, we're all improving in our own ways, if you don't believe it or not, but we are. And I'm not saying that music should be your outlet. For me, music helps me when words fail. But through all this chaos, it's important to truly embrace your presence because it's important. It's not just important to other people, it's important to you because it's important to wake up and live the best day you can possibly be. And just remind yourself and ask yourself, did I do the best? Was I the best version of myself today? Can I be happy with how I ended my life, ended my day? And so finding your voice isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. And for me, the viola became my voice. Thank you. Thank you for letting my voice be heard.
Welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed your break. Please welcome to the stage Stephen Williams with his speech on the importance of good hygiene. Cyber hygiene, that is.
Good evening. Emily Griggs was 19 years old. Typical 19-year-old. Loved to post on social media. Go to parties, take pictures, take selfies. The normal stuff. A couple years later, Emily went to law school. Graduated first in her class. True story. Emily went on a job interview in her hometown, dream job. She knew she was going to get the job. Interview, perfect. Emily went home. She waited patiently by the computer, by her phone, from the call. A couple hours later, Emily got an unfortunate email. We loved you, but I'm sorry. Just confused. What in the world? We found something on your social media in your background, and unfortunately, we can't hire you. Crushed. All that work, education, perfect job, what she wanted to do, because some photos she had posted when she was 19 years old. So, she's okay now. She went on, she got a new job, she cleaned up her social media, and she's doing just fine. My name is Stephen Williams. In case you probably can't tell, I'm a returning to school student. I work in information security, and this evening I want to speak a little bit about cyber hygiene. It's important for all ages. My age, your age, older people, much older people. In our pocket right now, most of you, if not all of you, are carrying a cell phone. Right? It's a weapon. It's a social weapon. You got to be careful. That thing's on you mostly 24/7. So what I want to talk about is some examples of good hygiene, cyber hygiene. We'll look at some bad examples of cyber hygiene, right? Good, there's bad. So let's talk about the good part, right? What are some good things we can do? Monitoring our social media, strong passwords. My presentation is a little more interactive, so I may do a poll or a show of hands. So, quick show of hands, how many people have the same password for at least 3 applications? 5 applications. 10. Use the same password for everything we do. That's okay. I appreciate your honesty. Very good. That's okay. And here there's a younger generation, a little younger than me. Our older generation, I guarantee they use the same password for everything they do. It's hard to remember, right? Password 123, password 123. Strong passwords, important, right? Look, I don't like strong passwords. You got to do it though, right? It used to be 4-digit pins, sign on to your email 6. Now it's like 12, 15. You can go up to 20 if you want to. Software updates. Actually, I'm going to jump back down to password protection. How many of you write down all your passwords? Be honest. There you go. That's okay. Look, you really should find a password protector. We'll get in some recommendations here later. So there are all kinds of technology that you can take advantage of to protect your passwords. It's important. Change them up. Software updates. I know they're annoying. Apple, Samsung, whoever you got. Sit there, you wait. You look at that, it's like, man, I should have updated that app. I've been so to update that app 3 months ago. I really should update that. Those updates fix critical patches that the developers deem worthy for you to download. Why? Because they're gaps where bad people, bad guys, threat actors, predators, whatever you want to call them, can get into your social media, can get onto your phone. Do those patches, do those updates. Multi-factor authentication. If you're an App State student, you've got Duo, whatever we use here. Sorry. You use it. It's great. Encourage your parents to use it. Encourage your loved ones to use it. It helps. It adds an extra layer of security, right? That's what we want, just a little bit more security. So, poor hygiene, exactly the opposite. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Couple big ones, right? We talked about weak passwords, no password 123s, outdated software, lack of training and understanding, right? Public Wi-Fi. We're all guilty of it. I was guilty of it. I am guilty of it at some point. Terrible. Please find a VPN. Please find a hotspot. There's no need for you to be sitting in Starbucks using their Wi-Fi with someone else right behind you looking at everything that's on your screen. Be careful. Poor hygiene, what can it lead to? Unnecessary exposure of your personal information, right? I was told by my classmates, and I'm going to show my age a little bit here, but I grew up in the time where everybody had their Facebook birthday on Facebook, right? Feels good. Look, we're going to sing you happy birthday. You're going to get 500 people to tell you happy birthday. Well, guess what? Now that bad guy knows when your birthday is because they're looking at your Facebook page. Adjust your privacy settings. Go to private, right? Do you really need it? 500 people telling you happy birthday? If you do, that's okay. I'd like it. It's okay. But it could also lead to targeting, scammers, online predators, privacy invasions, data breaches. Not fun. I'll go over data breaches in just a little bit. And digital footprint. What is digital footprint? If you're on the internet, you post it on the internet, it's there. Very hard to get off. Think about that on a Friday night when you post that picture like Emily did. More stuff on privacy invasions, data breaches, digital footprint, the exploitation of personal information, whether it's social security number, your information about your family, email addresses, just personal information can be anything. It can be your IP address. It could be a biometric. That's your information. You own it. Sometimes data breaches can be out of our control. We all like to go to concerts, right? Ticketmaster. Boom. How many here went to a ticket show, bought tickets from Ticketmaster last year? Yep. Pop quiz. How many individuals received a data breach notification last year? Hint. This is from 2023. The slide is just a little bit aged. I apologize. 6,189,645,899, 321. You're wrong. 1.7 billion people received a privacy notification. A lot of it was from her. Kidding. I love Taylor. 312% increase from 2023. Probably doubled last year. That's what statistics tell us. Ticketmaster, AT&T. If you don't have Ticketmaster, you probably have AT&T. Change Healthcare. The list goes on and on and on. And every data breach isn't super critical, but that's a tiny piece of information that the bad guys need to get that much closer to your identity. So let's talk about that little device in your phone we talked about. Don't access sensitive info on third-party apps. Third-party app, what's that? Any Snapchatters in here? Just kidding. Snapchat's not a third-party app. At least they say they're not. Only download apps from the official stores, app stores, whoever your provider is. Review the permissions. What am I giving them permission to see? What am I doing in here? Right? Delete unused apps. I've got 3 on my phone, all cards on the table I don't use anymore. And here I am speaking, telling you not to do it. Clean up, spring cleaning, by all means. Please go in there and delete them. Make sure you're using the correct app, not a third-party app, and don't download info from an unknown source. Here's some more tips for good social media behaviors, cyber hygiene, if you will. Adjust your privacy settings on your phone, on all your apps. Go in there. Understand what you're giving them permission to see. Your photos, the dates, where you are. It's very important, critical. Be cautious of who you accept friend requests for. My grandfather, bless his heart, still accept, how old is he? 75, 85, 80. Still accepts friends requests from 19-year-olds. Grandpa, she doesn't exist. Right? She's fake. She's fugazi. Not there. Best I can do, I go in there and clean it up. He's not going to listen to me. He's 85. He can do his own thing. But I still try to tell him every time I see him. But encourage your loved ones. At the end, we'll talk a little bit about education. You sitting in here probably know more about social media than your parents, your grandparents, a lot of your loved ones. It's incredibly helpful for you to help them. Avoid sharing sensitive information, right? No need for you to, I'm going on vacation. Well, guess what? Now they know your house is empty. Not smart. Be careful what you're sharing on there. Monitoring and reviewing. I call it spring cleaning. In my house, my wife likes to go through and throw all my stuff away in the spring. Clothes, whatever's in the garage. But also do it on your email. Who has 1,000 emails sitting in their inbox right now? See? Spring cleaning. How many of those emails, app state emails aside, personal emails, how many of those emails are probably from 5 years ago? Yep. So we do spring cleaning at our house, our apartments, our condos, our dorms. Do it on your phones. Do it on your social media. Do it in your email. If you're not using it, get rid of it. Right? Understand perception. This is a big one, right? Update your profile pic. Make adjustments. Who are you on social media these days? Who was Emily? Emily was a different person I talked about at the very beginning. She was a different person. She went to go get a law degree. She could have cleaned up her social media. She might have, but it was still there. Right? So before you post, think. Remove all outdated information. iPads, stuff you're not using, take it off. Clean it up. Maintain accurate representation. Right? Who am I? Who's Stephen Williams? Finally, think before you post. Consider if what you post can hurt someone. You've probably done it. I've done it. We don't do it on purpose, but think, right? Should I do this? Am I going to hurt somebody? Is it my place? Respect and appropriateness. Be nice, kind, respect. Would you want someone saying that about you? And make sure your social media aligns with your personal values. So finally, here's my call to action. Help others. Right? I've said it before, but this is the most important thing I'm going to say today. Help your parents. Help your family. If you don't take away anything else from what I say today, help them with their spring cleaning. Help them with their social media. They're new. Most folks in here, social media was alive and kicking as soon as you came. So, please, help educate those others. Develop some cyber hygiene. Have a plan, right? What should I do? Every year, sit down. What am I doing from a cyber? Because the bad guys are getting better every single day. And finally, this has nothing to do with cybersecurity, but it does have to do with something close to my heart. April is Autism Awareness Month. If you know someone suffering from autism or is autistic or is in the neurodivergent community, I encourage you, please be kind. This person's days are very hard. Neurodiverse and children adults with autism, very smart. We process things differently. As a father, it's my hardest struggle every single day, is to help my neurodiverse child. So I ask you one thing, please be kind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Now, please welcome Sean Sika with his speech, What Jamaican Sprinters Teach Us About Shifting American STEM Culture, to the stage.
All right. So, if your family is anything like mine, then every 4 years a monumental event occurs. The whole family agrees on a show to watch, okay? That's because the Olympics come on, the Summer Olympics, okay? Now, you'll sit down and inevitably sprinting will come on, and inevitably, usually America loses. And this is the point where your crazy uncle turns to you and he says, it's because they all run to school. Well, I'm here to tell you that surprisingly or unsurprisingly to you, your uncle is wrong. In fact, more Americans run and walk to school than in Jamaica. That's not to say that culture doesn't still play a role. In America, we turn on the TV and we watch American football. In Jamaica, they turn on the TV and they watch track. In America, the highest attended track and field event ever recorded 10,000 somewhat impressed fans. In Jamaica, Champs, a high school track event annually, records an attendance of 40,000 screaming and hollering fans. In America, the highest attended football game ever recorded, but had over 150,000 people in attendance. This begs the question, if you're an American athlete, why train for a sport that's going to draw at its peak 1/7 of the viewership and a whole lot less money? The answer, you don't. You train for football, you make more money, and every 4 years the Olympics comes around and we inevitably lose. Now, why am I up here talking about sprinting? I mean, that's going to help you in 4 years when the Olympics comes around, but it's not going to change your life in the way that a speech should. It's because I'm not talking about sprinting. I'm talking about the power of putting a culture behind a goal. In Jamaica, their culture is fully behind sprinting, and it shows every year, every modern Olympics, they've brought home gold. Now, how do you gauge the culture of America, you ask me? Glad you asked, that's why I'm here. Now, one way that I like to do this is I like to look at the top 5 most desired jobs among American youth. If you'll take a gander at this chart with me, you'll see professional athlete, YouTuber, musician, gamer, and finally at the bottom, doctor and nurse. American girls, doctor, nurse, actress, musician, artist, YouTuber, and streamer. Now, these desires show in the classroom as American teachers report students being less motivated than ever. Not only at the lower education level either. In higher education, over 42 million Americans will drop out of college. Now, why are these kids dropping out of college? You should be asking, how does college help you become a professional athlete or YouTuber? Let you in on a little secret, it doesn't. At least it hasn't for me yet, we'll see. Now, what do we do from here? How do we change this culture? Well, let's zoom out, let's get some historical context. The year is 1958. Russia has just launched Sputnik, thus beating America at the space race. This fear of losing the space race spurred an idolization of academics never before seen in America. Hours of homework done by high schoolers more than doubled as our culture shifted to idolize those who sought careers in STEM. Now, did this have any real effect? It actually did. Thank you for asking. If you look at that phone in your pocket, the camera on it that you're using to take pictures of the guy on stage with the 9-pack talking about culture, that's a product of the space race. Those cushy memory foam seats are in, another product of the space race. Moral of the story is simple. American culture has all the power to shift behind academics, and when that happens, society as a whole sees positive implications. Now, how do we change this culture? How do we make this happen again? Now, I'm not encouraging fear. That's a bad way to shift culture. I shouldn't have to tell you that. I'm also not encouraging Less Boy Meets World. Love that show. Like, what are we talking about here? So, Phineas and Ferb, that doesn't have the power to shift a culture. You've all seen that. It's a great show, but it's not going to make you want a career in STEM. That can't be the only reason. And the problem isn't on the part of American youth either. As a volunteer and worker for Mountain Alliance, a nonprofit experiential learning charity centered right here in Boone, I've seen firsthand that this generation of youth has all the power to be engaged, driven, and have fun in STEM. How do I know this, you ask? Well, just the other day, I was talking with a kid for over an hour after I told him that my Baltimore Ravens were going to win the Super Bowl. He had an argument against this in every possible way, telling me I was delusional, backing it up with statistics and coming up with counter arguments on the fly for anything I could say. But later, when I sat down with him to do his homework in history and math, he struggled. In history, he had trouble recalling facts, stories, and creating a timeline. And in math, he couldn't visualize problems and struggled to see the real-world applications. And to be honest, I didn't blame him. Overall, his history homework lacked any visualization of the interesting parts of history, and his math homework lacked any real-world application shown. So, what do we do from here? Well, the changes are quite easy, actually. It's not that hard to showcase the interesting parts of history in a history classroom. It's not that hard to put a student's interest into a math problem. And most of all, it's not that hard to reward a kid even when he has the wrong answer. Sitting down with this kid, the biggest problem he faced was struggling to have confidence even when he had the right answer, and that's easily shown in our American education system where every mistake is harshly criticized and penalized. So, lesson plans, they're great, but they don't get to the root of the problem. I mean, I'm talking about culture, not lesson plans for a reason. You don't get to the root of a problem talking on a stage in Boone either. You get to the root of a problem through people like you. People like you encouraging kids to seek out careers in STEM. People like you showcasing the successes of women and other minorities in STEM. Anyone you don't think of in STEM should be showcased to those so that we can show them that they have all the power to be in STEM. It's not just a field for rich and wealthy white guys. And then finally, the easiest one of all and most importantly is just rewarding kids even when they have the wrong answer. Confidence can take you a whole lot of the way. And it took me here. So, next time you sit down and you watch the Olympics, or next time you look at an education statistic and wonder why America is losing both, know that the solution to both is the same. Change the training plan and change the culture, and anything is possible. Thank you for coming to my speech. I'm Sean.
Thank you, Sean. And last, but certainly not least, please welcome Vivian Rose Benton with her speech on environmental injustice and community organizing, building resilience and fostering independence.
Howdy, y'all. Those of you who don't know me, I'm a woman who just so happens to be transgender. Also, as you may have read or maybe didn't, I study politics and the environment. So as you can imagine, I struggle a little bit with anxiety and hope for the future and the present, let's be real. But in the middle of those two disciplines, there exists a community, the environmental justice community, that really helps me with finding that hope and seeing the progress that has been made, is being made, and will continue to be made. So you can probably guess more or less what environmental justice is as a movement, but I want to make sure that you really understand what I mean when I say those words. So I'm going to break it down a little bit because it requires a little bit of a more in-depth definition of both of those terms. Now, it's really easy to understand the environment as the wilderness areas, state and local parks. But in this context, at the very least, and I'd argue in all contexts, it really means the built environment. That's everything that we've made to house us. Our road networks, our communication lines, the way that we manage our waste and transmit energy. those are part of the environment. And now, justice, or injustice specifically, it's really easy to see that one when it's right in your face. It's personal, it's intentional, it's targeted at somebody. But injustice also happens, and mostly happens, kind of behind the scenes. It's a matter of procedure. It's a matter of distribution. Injustice sees communities receive disproportionate impacts to other communities. And that's really what environmental injustice is, and environmental justice movement is trying to address. Now, I'm going to give you a brief history lesson, and I promise it'll be at least a little bit interesting. So while the environmental justice movement was happening for decades before this event here, what we really conceive of today as the environmental justice movement was born in 1982 in Warren County in North Carolina, when this community decided they were going to take action against the dumping of highly toxic polychlorinated biphenyls in a landfill in their backyard. I think understandably so. And this community, however, knew that taking action wasn't just something that kind of happened and got results because you wanted it to. It takes organization, and it takes intent, and it takes building power. And so they built power. They built power with some of the preeminent organizations in the civil rights movement at that time, those being the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the United Church of Christ. And so with them, they staged protests. They blocked off roads. The National Guard had to come in. However, in the short term, it's unfortunate, but it's true that they weren't really successful. The landfill got built and filled with PCBs, and over 500 protesters were arrested. But in the long term, which is what really I think we should be concerned with here, they were so very successful. They built this movement. They created a foundation for what we're doing today in environmental justice. And that foundation was around this term that they called environmental racism. You see, out of this coalition, one of the partners, the United Church of Christ, commissioned and published a report, Toxic Waste and Race Report. This report was studying environmental racism, specifically with landfills of toxic waste, but it's really applicable to other things. And they found that what had the highest correlation with where a toxic waste landfill was placed wasn't how few people there were, or the economic status of the area, or even, something like their voting preferences. It was the racial makeup of those communities. It found that landfills, toxic waste landfills, were predominantly and overwhelmingly situated in communities of color. And so this was groundbreaking. This changed environmental racism from a specter that haunted communities across America and across the globe, don't get me wrong, to something that was discrete and tangible, and something they could point to and say, this is what we're fighting against. This is what we want you to take action against. And it wasn't just communities that took actions. Reports like this and the 2007 follow-up, 20 years after, had tangible change in governance. The EPA still to this day has a commission on environmental racism or environmental justice. They call it environmental equity. And we've seen other foundational changes in governance regarding environmental justice. There's one in North Carolina, actually, a commission in North Carolina. But it's also important to remember that justice doesn't happen only on the legal and the political side of things. And also, environmental justice isn't just concerned with landfills. You see, the movement has evolved and changed over the decades. One of the most salient issues today in North Carolina is that of CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations. Now, again, this is something that you probably have a conception of in your brain, but I'll go a little deeper in it, just to make sure. There are areas where animals, poultry or hogs, are brought into confined spaces and raised before they can be sent off to the slaughterhouse. Now, there are huge animal welfare concerns with these, but for the purposes of this presentation, we're focused on the environmental and the human impacts. You see, CAFOs, like the lagoon and spray field system here, are incredibly damaging to the communities that they're in. They have huge implications for the physical, the mental, and the social health of these communities. Because, like in these lagoon and spray field systems, the waste that these thousands of hogs or poultry produce is pumped out into an open air pit. And when that fills up, it's aerosolized and sprayed out over a crop field. Those crops are then packaged and labeled as organic for you to buy. Enjoy that. And so communities like Duplin County in North Carolina decided again, this is a huge injustice. We need to take action. We need to get our representatives to see what we're facing. And so they put out stuff in the news. Declaration of Elsie Herring was published many times over and seen by Congress. The Rolling Stone has published articles, News and Observer. In 1997, lagoon and spray field systems were banned from new ones being implemented or old ones being expanded. But there still are many in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia that are in operation to this day because they were built before the law was passed. Clearly, a solution was not found. Progress still needed to be made. And so communities turn to non-governmental organizations for fixes to right this huge, massive wrong. Organizations like the River Keepers of North Carolina monitor the water quality in these areas. Clean Air North Carolina, air quality testing. Organizations like the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network provide door-to-door well water testing to determine if the water that residents use to cook with, to drink, to eat, to bathe in are free of contaminants. Unfortunately, the vast, vast majority are contaminated by CAFOs like this one. It really goes to show, though, that progress isn't made just through one way. And importantly, when policymakers, when your government is unable or simply just unwilling to right wrongs and hold corporations accountable, community organizations and community members are there and will help. Now, we've talked some about really disparate issues of injustice, but during catastrophe and disasters, like what we experienced with Helene, there are still issues of environmental injustice. These catastrophes lead to the people with the fewest resources experiencing the largest impact. I'm sure that I don't need to remind you that, especially as you went out into the county, of the wipeouts, the roads that were no longer there, the communication, the power lines that were down, the communication networks that didn't exist. Watauga County's disaster response network that was formal as we know it was overwhelmed in some cases and others completely inoperable. So what happened? The community organized. It felt like the entire county, the entire state mobilized to bring resources, to bring care to people in need. Organizations that otherwise had no business being in disaster response. Down home, North Carolina, Get Out the Vote initiative was doing muckouts, was saving trees from roads. River Girl, a recreation center, was operating as a disaster relief hub. Cornerstone Summit Church still has tiny homes in their parking lot. So many others were part of this. And it really goes to show just what can happen when we put our minds to it. But I want to let you imagine for just a second. Imagine that instead of this being a spur-of-the-moment reaction to a catastrophe, this was something that was planned for and prepared for, that was given intentional consideration before something like Helene happened. Because while I hope and pray that nothing like Helene ever happens here or anywhere else for that matter, the reality of the matter is that it will. And that due to climate change, disasters like this are getting more frequent and more severe. We have to be prepared for the next one. Now, before I go into my closing, I've been asked to invite you all to a couple of events that are happening through the Sustainable Development Department. First, there's a screening of the film Our Movement Starts Here on the 15th. And that's about what I've been talking about today, the environmental justice movement and the birth of it, the Warren County PCB protests. 4 community members from Warren County that were part of that protest and are still leaders in the environmental justice movement will be there to speak on a panel. The day after, on the 16th, is the Environmental Justice Celebration Day at Farm Cafe. Food for that is being provided by the SD Farm. So you can go get some really local good food and meet the community. And then from the 13th, from the 17th, there's a mini exhibition in Belk Library, also about environmental justice and the birth of the movement. I also learned this morning that on the 9th, so on Wednesday, Community Engaged Leadership is also hosting an event at Farm Cafe. It's a lunch and learn. It's part of their Feed Boon for a Day program. So get out, volunteer, or just show up and have a meal and meet people in the community. So it's my conclusion. If you're to take one thing away from tonight, and with all due respect to my other presenters, because they did a really great job, but I would have it be this. Get involved. Seriously. There's so many fantastic organizations and community in Watauga County, in Boone, in North Carolina, in the Southeast, in the nation, that are doing such great work across so many different action items. Go find some that you are really passionate about, that you want to be part of, and be part of this, be part of the solution, be part of the community. Get involved. Make connections. Find your people. Because a connected community is a responsive community, and a responsive community is a prepared community. And at the end of the day, the only people that we can really rely on when things go bad and we need help and to protect us is ourselves. Thank you.
At this time, I would like to invite all of our wonderful cast and crew to come out and take a bow. Thank you all for coming to this year's Panorama. I hope you all enjoyed the speeches and learned a lot. I know I did. We'll see you next year.